WL Shuffle, haven't done something like this in a long time. This is a Darkest Dungeon 2 video, and the reason they've slowed down is just because there's really nothing to talk about while we wait for future updates. And so I have like 1 or 2 guides I can make in the meantime, but really we're just waiting for stuff. So if you want to see more stuff from the Shuff, make sure you check out the other playlists and stuff, like the edited supercuts that Ranger makes. They are fantastic. Puts a lot of work into them. I find them hilarious. The people that watch them like them, so make sure that you check that out. Maybe I'll put a card somewhere. I don't know, if I remember. Other than that, if you want to support the channel, there are links down below, like Discord, Twitter, Twitch, Patreon, and it's not even Twitter anymore, it's called X, but I'm never going to call it X. But yeah. As for the people asking, I stream on Twitch and YouTube 3 days a week, Wednesday through Friday at 1 p.m. PST. Usually. Took this week off because I had a lot of other stuff going on in the background, which is finally starting to resolve. Okay, now this video is about the hottest takes for the Darkest Dungeon series. We took this very cute art of Plague Doctor Paracelsus, giving you the actually with a bunch of nerdy emojis, and a lot of you responded. There's 138 comments, and we're gonna go by the top ones, so whatever was like the highest voted and stuff, or the most traffic, I guess. I'll try and give everything some kind of response. It's not going to be a super in-depth one unless it really warrants it, because we got so many to get through. Anyway, I would have said Paracelsus is the type of girl to go, actually, but then I remembered that's literally what the first playable hero shrine for her is about. True. Butcher Circus is actually fun sometimes. True. Duelist plays like an early access man-at-arms. Flesh meditation, touche meditation, literally any button meditation. The only difference is that Man-at-Arms never needed to press Retribution while Duelist crumbles if she doesn't meditation for 2 turns. I really disagree with this because they are not built for the same thing. You have Man-at-Arms, who is a support character. He used to be able to do some good damage, and he still can with Vanguard. But his thing was protecting the team and using his tools to dismantle tough boss fights. That's what he does, that's what he's for. Duelist is someone that can do more offensive support for the team with some of our other stuff, but is also primarily a damage dealer. So with the flesh meditation, touche meditation, literally any button meditation, assuming this is referring to just a meditation loop where you spam and get dodge and riposte. Now, having infinite riposte is a brain-dead easy way to play things, but they don't fill the same role. Like, if Man-at-Arms gets hit while riposting, he's fine. You know, if he gets hit 4 times, he's usually fine. Duelist gets hit twice, she's probably dead. So, I don't think these are comparable, even though riposte is at the center of all of it. Cultist Deacon is hot. Hell no. Abomination is a good and fun character. Actually true, even though I made a video saying he is the worst character. Comparatively, doesn't mean he's not fun, doesn't mean he doesn't pop off, but people get that wrong. Chandler Spawn is the most busted pet, very dependent on trinket drops. Actually like the gameplay loop. Okay, cool. I mean, the combat's good. Divine 2 Comfort is a solid ability. False. Grave Robber is a top 3 hero after so many buffs, right behind Flag and Man-at-Arms. She's actually a top 1 hero, and she was before the buffs. It's been unfair to compare DD1 to 2 since DD1 has a lot more time for tuning and polishing the game, time to make content, and the DLCs. Mostly true. The stuff in DD2 takes longer to make, and it's more fleshed out. Characters have 11 abilities, 3 paths, some even have 4 if Wanderer doesn't suck. And so there's a lot of stuff to tweak and mess with. And if you compare the number of enemies and heroes and stuff like that between launch, they're pretty close, even though DD2 requires more effort to get things in the game. So I don't like comparing the two of them. A lot of people do, and a lot of people will in this thread. Deathlore Resist always pays off. It's a meme and a myth. Physician Plague Doctor is usable if you use a fire team. I have not heard this one. I've heard a lot of people defend Physician and say this, that, and why it's good, but really Physician just The issue is it doesn't do damage and you have to kill monsters, and so whatever you do with Physician, someone else on the team usually has to help carry the damage load because it's not her. Like how Bounty Hunter's only available for one region. Wish they would expand on special hero interactions like that. I agree, most people don't. Significantly less of a hot take, more of a thing no one talks about. The trinket balance in DD1 is horrible, and none of the trinket tiers are consistent. True. Several characters are screwed by their class trinkets being bad, limiting how they can play. I wouldn't say that part's true. Some of them are a bit limiting, but usually they lean into what the character is already doing. So, like the Occultist Cauldron, you're up front stunning. Like, let's not lie to ourselves. Don't like how class trinkets in DD2 are focused on hero paths, so sometimes you just can't use them. There's a lot more interesting stuff involving the DD2 trinkets, and this part here, why they're focused on hero paths is because, in my estimation, right, no inside knowledge, what have you, but hero balance is taking such a freaking long time that trinkets are becoming the band-aid solution, or the bandage solution. You just slap that on, you go, well, this path kind of sucks. Okay, here's a trinket that makes it, you know, somewhat viable. Good luck finding it, but at least it's there. And so, if hero balance goes all the way to the end, and this is why it's been a problem that it should have been done before, is because once hero balance is done, probably gonna have to look at some of the enemies so they're not as overpowered or underpowered compared to the heroes. You have to look at a lot of items with how they interact with the heroes, and it's just going to make more work in the long run, but at least it's coming, you know. I'd rather have it than not have it. Day 1 FF was the best FF. I asked for a hot one, not what they think. It's good, got me. Love Rapturous Flag. Almost never cures affliction. Rapturous is still an affliction, and it can get people killed. I've had a Rapturous Occultist, or Flagellant, kill my Occultist on a Shambler fight, so it sucks. Don't think you're supposed to beat the game. Wait, supposed to beat this game by doing blind runs. Its motto, but by doing blind runs. Its motto is literally face your failure, skipping, figuring out the encounters yourself, and the frustration and learnings derived from failed runs and experimentation betrays the spirit. You know what? I agree with that. My channel wouldn't survive if everyone thought that way, but for all intents and purposes, I do agree. Like DD2's format better than 1 because if I lose characters, I don't want to restart my entire save. I mean, it partly is a skill issue, but what this is referring to is like, you know, you lose a couple characters or whatever, you might be out some memories, you might lose that run, but that's it. DD2 or DD1, you know, if you don't have, especially if like you're a newer player and you don't know how to build your roster and stuff, you know, you lose a team of level 6s, you just, that's it. That's like another 20 hours or whatever you have to play, grinding up an entire new team. And no one wants to do that. It's easier to start over. Leper miss, Leper bad. That is not a hot take. It's a freezing cold one. Game is not getting reinstalled till mod support. Alright, we'll see you in like, hopefully a couple weeks. Need more instant stuns like Uppercut? I agree. Status tokens shouldn't expire, period. Having your whole rack of tokens dissolve because you got stunned and shuffled immediately after pressing a buff skill feels lame. No, I disagree with this. Because, like, how long is too long, you know? If we go by, like, a TTRPG rule, like Dungeons and Dragons, a round of combat's like 6 seconds, or whatever, like a turn of combat, whatever you want to call it. So should someone sniff PD's juice vapor and get powered up and have it last longer than about 20 seconds, because that's about what 3 turns would be. Like, how long are you high off that? Forever? VR should be official paid DLC because you felt you're ripping off the creator. You can support them on Patreon. It doesn't go to them like directly, but it pays a lot of the artists and stuff. So if you do want to support them, it's out there. Shoutouts to the BRT. Fantabulous people. I never gone more than 4 hours into a campaign because I restart whenever a hero dies. Not out of rage, just really like the characters. Fair. Don't like Crimson Court DLC. The trinkets are great for the most part. I mean, except for the Signet, the Dead Rat. Like, pretty much anything that's not a class set trinket is kind of bad, if I remember right. And even then, a lot of the set trinkets are kind of bad by themselves and rarely good as a set. So, yeah. Love the enemies for their lore and aesthetics. However, it's annoying that you can't cure the curse of beating the whole DLC, defeating the fanatics to get curses. Okay, so you can get it before beating the entire DLC. You kill the current boss, the whole roster gets purged, and it takes a long time to build it back up. Most of the time, if Crimson Curse is being a big issue, then you're taking too long to clear courtyard stuff, or you're just not playing safe enough to where it's spreading too fast on your roster. There are things you can do. You can kick these heroes, you can build the Sanguine Vintners if you really need to, but once you've done Crimson Court a couple times, this should be manageable to the point where a lot of veteran players call it Crimson Upside, because there are a lot of buffs, blood is easy to manage, and you're disease immune. You can also double chug and get bonus damage when you're bloodlusted. So there's a lot of good stuff about it. Gotta play into it. Boss fights in the courtyard you weren't a fan of either. Playing Whack-A-Mole with the Baron. Literally the best boss fight in the game, but go off. Healing Lottery at the Viscount. I mean, you can really rush him down if you need to. DDR with the Countess. Heavy boots. Move resist. Screwed up Countess by failing the boss fight and running out of firewood. What? Ran out of firewood, so you needed camp buffs to beat her? I don't know. And this is the point in the video where I say, and remind you again if I did say it before, but all of this is just for fun. I'm getting a lot of meme answers, and I'm just going to poke fun where I can. Don't take it to heart. Alright, I'm not beating up on Kaiser Roll 5379. Kaiser Rolls are actually delicious. So please, take a step back. Playing DD1 or 2 blind is unambiguously awful. You know what's funny is that right above here, there is someone saying that you should play it blind because otherwise you ruin the experience. The game is too punishing if you go into a boss fight without the proper team. So in DD2, this is a little more true because there are some confessions where, like, if you just aren't prepared, it's GG, you know, at the crossroads in some cases. But what I will say is if you're really conscious about your team building, especially in the first game, if you make well-made teams, like balanced teams that have control, recovery, damage, reach, like if you fulfill all of the basics, really hard to lose the first time to a good amount of the bosses. There's some that'll still, you know, surprise you, but for the most part, a lot of it's manageable. But that is tough to do as a newer player because you don't know all the mechanics yet or what works. You know, you don't have that experience. But once, I mean, I guess that's the whole thing, right? Because it's a blind experience, but it's really just what you want to put up with. Is it too punishing, or is it not punishing enough and you ruin the experience for yourself? Both I can see. Prefer Poet Leper over Sergeant Man-at-Arms as a full tank. It's great in the Leviathan fight. Can easily get Tom with Intimidate and Withstand, and some trinkets that help sustain like Flower and the Charm. That gives move and stun res. So I wouldn't call Poet a full tank. Poet's more of a punching bag. You know, the healing's a little bit better. The disruption resistances are a bit better. And you lose damage for that. Sergeant Man-at-Arms can throw dot resist on people. He can still heal team stress. He can still immobilize himself, riposte, bellow, remove crit, riposte, all that. The Man-at-Arms kit doesn't really care what the path is. It's still effective 110% of the time. Whereas Poet, I like Poet, okay? I'm a Poet enjoyer. But it doesn't really bring much as a full quote tank class. You get some taunt, and that's about it. Man-at-Arms gets taunt, guard, can move positions, you know, to take hits, and I think Man-at-Arms is more of a support compared to Leper, who's being a punching bag, but that again is my opinion. A-Bomb's one of the best heroes for the first 10 weeks. Yes, honestly, A-Bomb's a really good out-of-the-box character in DD1 because you can leave him at 30 to 40 stress and bait those stress attackers, and then self-heal in the stalling phase. Even knows what the stalling phase is. This person knows the game. That's not sarcastic. If you have Jester, then this doesn't matter much. Well, Jester's cringe, though. Blind tokens are a fun and interactive mechanic. Compared to accuracy, yes. Yes. I don't care if you're being sarcastic. This is, without the sarcasm, this is correct. In DD1, rank 2 tank occultist, I don't know about tank, is the best occultist for Cove and the Darkest Dungeon. Lock in Hardskin, Petrified Skull. The Crimson Court, is that the Color Madness trinket? Was that give him like 40 prod or something? And your sets. Level 4 or 5 and 6, he's at 40 HP, 30 dodge, 40 prod, 8 speed. And a second trinket slot. You know, that's actually kind of good on paper. I wouldn't mind trying that. Because right now, me, I just go unga bunga, I spam the stun trinkets and the stun button and take 0 damage. But you can still do that with this too. So I'm actually curious how this plays now. Seems pretty cool. Although I will say, prod much less effective than dodge. Since you have 0 prod, Occultist has 30 dodge. I think that's tied for like the highest. You know, you give them Luminous, Evasive, or whatever, give him an extra 5 dodge and like 1 or 2 trinkets. Evasive and a Camo Cloak puts him at like 50. And that's good enough to handle a lot of things in terms of dodging it. Because a lot of accuracy at champions, about 102, 107, and 112, respectively. So you get to 50, 60. Not too hard to do. And you're looking pretty good. Houndmaster should be a cat bro. I agree, Cat Vision TM. I know most people want Houndmaster or whatever back, but out of everyone, Arbalest and DD2 would specifically carry your runs the hardest, so you want her back. Great take. Dedicated backline in every path, like how Leper's dedicated frontline, would be interesting. I know we got Sharpshot and Grave Robber reworks, Sharpshot man, essentially, but it'd be nice to have someone like Arb. I don't know, it feels better to shoot a crossbow for massive damage and, you know, do some healing or whatever than it does to just I shoot pistol. I shoot pistol for like 10 damage. Bam. I only have a DD1 hot take, but for 2, I think there should be more lair bosses instead of the same ones. Some kind of diversity in the lair would be fun. I agree. Hot take for DD1, Profane Scroll and Battle Vestal is the better way to utilize her versus the typical backline double heal stun. Disagree. Disagree. Plague Doctor is a DPS character. In 2, yes. You want hot, runaway, burn, baby, burn. Anyways, DD2 doesn't have enough filler tokens that give incremental buffs or debuffs. Filler tokens? Do you want filler tokens? I just feel like that's going to add to the screen. There's going to be so much bloat. We have a bunch of symbols and doodads and hieroglyphics under every character. It's already hard enough to follow as it is. The DE games, especially the first, need skill trees for weapons. We're talking about Darkest Dungeon? DD, not DE? Sure. I'm always down for more depth. Vestal isn't a terrible hero in DD2. That's where I stopped reading. I'm kidding. Shoutouts to Praises of the Sun, also a streamer if I remember correctly. Goes so far as to say she only needs some changes to make, or to grace and make Consec of Light give 15% crit while standing on it instead of a chance to give a crit token, so it stacks with natural crit. Wanderer is okay, Confessor needs help, a Chaplain Seraph. Respectfully, pretty much disagree with a lot of this. The thing I do agree with is she doesn't need like a full overhaul. Like, she's not in that territory, but like a couple tweaks, numbers tweaks, she'll probably be much better. However, she is probably the least effective character in the game. This is from someone who's played her a lot. This is from someone who's taken her through what I consider still the hardest challenge, and that's Stygian Grand Slam from release. So I think she needs a bit more. I had to step away there for about 30 minutes. I'm not quite sure exactly where I left off, but I feel like I spoke quite a lot on this one. Chaplain needs some help. Seraph is good. Wanderer is okay comparatively. And yeah, just let's buff Vestal. Okay, let's buff Vestal. CC is the best DD1 DLC. Factually true. The only major thing you wish of it was maybe a bit more variety in the courtyard. Yeah, I could see that because it's the same like background and enemy comps usually. Nolan, one of my favorite people. Darkest Dungeon has way too many control tools compared to a lot of games and caused everyone confusion when the second game wasn't as defensive. I don't know if that's a hot take or just a factual statement. Orphan is the most busted path for Runaway. 4 dots or melee plus 2 DOT is crazy good, and you can lower the burn res piercing through other ways. I was actually talking to Ranger about this morning, where Arsonist is, in my opinion, usually better just because it has the res piercing, so it's more consistent. Orphan will be better in a lot of cases if you can solve the burn res pierce if you're putting her in rank 4. So if you can solve this issue, I don't think it's as easy as this person's claiming, but if you can solve that, then yeah, Orphan can pop off. Anti is quite strong and should be used as a main unit significantly more. I agree. Excels in boss missions thanks to flash powder, chip damage, protect me buffs, and a healing option to keep units off death's door and prevent damage. This is damage over time. You can take her into other missions, but she's not the best for exactly room battles, especially on Stygian, because helping fun recoveries when your whole party goes mad. Okay, I think they're referring to stress, but I'm having trouble parsing that. But you can use it there for chip damage when you protect me. Cheese. I wouldn't call it cheese, it's just a mechanic, but get a good party member who can still do a lot on top of all the ridiculous money passives. Anti is more effective in combat than you think in the first game. So just dodge options, protect me on riposte characters, and the extra money. You know, a lot of people say the bank is the best district in DD1, and I used to agree, but honestly, if you can manage your Antiquarians pretty well for your file, you'll never need the bank. So, at least not till very late, because then you get the interest, and that's much better. Yeah, anti-good. May have many hours playing the game, but I'm certainly not an expert what is good or bad in DD1, so the hottest take I have is Torchless isn't quite as scary as you made it out to be, which isn't even a take. It's more like being overly cautious and staying broke because of a significant shift in loot tables. I think with Torchless in DD1, no one should just play full Torchless. Like, unless you're a streamer or you're doing it for the content, like no person should just do it, you know, on their own, because it's not gonna pop up as an achievement. Everyone on Reddit is still going to think you're trash no matter what accomplishments you have, so don't even do it. But lowering your torch strategically, like at the end of a fight, before you loot like a treasure chest, that kind of stuff, gets you a lot of... It gives you the torchless loot table, so it's still good to bring the extra torches and manipulate stuff. You don't have to stay at 0 light the entire time, is what I'm trying to say. Honestly, I'm not that expert to give a hot take. Recently finished DD1, only modded classes playthrough, and you're stuck at chapter 2. Well, thanks for commenting. The algorithm appreciates you. Occultist is somehow the best healer in the game. Early game DD1, he's actually, I think, consistently higher than Vestal, because of her like lower numbers. He's not... It's like, he's not an awful healer. He's not a good healer. He can pop off, but the issue is just the consistency. It's the fact that someone can roll 0 when you need them to live, which is why when we talk about occultists, we say to heal early. Heal at half. Don't heal at death's door. That's how people die. Man-at-Arms shouldn't be nerfed because he's the best in DD2. The other heroes should be buffed to his level. So, whenever I see this take, it doesn't matter what the game is, it is much easier to rope in the outlier than it is to buff the rest of the cast. Like, people will say this in fighting games a lot, too. Or MOBAs or whatever, you know, where there's like 40, 50 characters. It's just logistically not possible to consider that. Not at one time. It would take forever. And the fact of the matter is that Man-at-Arms should be nerfed because he's the best. And when we call him the best, it's not because, like, you know, when you play him right and you understand everything about the game, he offers so much to the player. It's not that. He is such a brain-dead character in this game to get immense value out of. You don't even have to know what the enemy can do in terms of attack to know who to guard. You just hit taunt. You hit taunt, and then the game plays itself. Because the next couple attacks hit Man-at-Arms, and he riposts, and all that. And he generates so much block that it's like impossible to kill him. And then if you know what you're doing, with the character, and you know what skills to take, like you know when to pick Bellow for Exemplar and stuff, he dismantles the game. And he's got a good stress heal. Like, he just does everything except heal another unit, man. He's so good. Do I want everyone at Man-at-Arms power? No! I don't want the game to be filled with Man-at-Arms and Alchemist Plague Doctor. I want the game to be filled with, like Rogue Highwayman. Solid, not overpowered, can pop off in the right situations, has a clear defined role. I don't want Man-at-Arms who slap into every team and he can win the game by himself almost. I don't like that. Like, there's so much to Man-at-Arms that people don't even use that makes him busted. It's not just the control tools, the taunt spam, the infinite block, the self-heal on crush. He has things like strategic withdrawal, where you can be at death's door and heal for a third of your life, also give yourself block, plus also give yourself speed. And it combos the target so you can fucking crush him afterwards. I'm sorry, I swore, I should say. I don't want the game to be filled with that. You shouldn't either. But he needs to be nerfed, what I'm saying. Bounced off DD2, so I can't give a hot take yet on that, but I'll say Crimson Court nearly ruined DD1 because of how it interacts with the base game. This is why we tell new players not to enable Crimson Court the very first run. You can play through the game, you can get halfway through the game. You know, you can get to like week 40 or something, or week 100 on your first file and go, okay, I have kind of a grasp on what's happening, and then turn it on after. You can do that. Just don't, like, a brand new player shouldn't turn it on, as sad as it is to say. Like, don't turn on your content. That's because the mechanics in CC and the enemies and the boss fights and how the epic dungeons work or whatever, it helps a lot if you have a fundamental understanding of the game. If you don't, then it is hard as hell. Speak from experience, speak from reading a lot of people say the same thing. The aesthetics are neat, so it would be somewhat enjoyable if the expansion could be played without your entire save file being ruined by the curse, fanatics, CC enemies showing up in zones where you need different specs. So right here, Like, again, if we talked about this with the other person, if your file is getting ruined by Curse and Crimson Court enemies and Fnatic, it's just the player. I'm not picking on anyone. Like I said, this is specifically what I am seeing as an expert. And that is, it's tough to manage all at once. And so people are going to struggle. And when you struggle with Crimson Court stuff, it's going to like take over the entire game. It's a mosquito infestation. It kind of plays like it. The courtyard maps being fixed, huge and full of overpowered enemies, makes it a slog where most players will just search online and follow a walkthrough. If the enemies feel overpowered in Crimson Court, it's because people are going in underprepared. They're going in with like fresh level 3s with like level 2 gear. And you should be going in there with level 4s with level 4 gear and skills. You know, you should be going in there fully prepared, not just throwing whatever in there. Unless you want to. I mean, if you find that fun, go ahead. But if you're really trying to min-max and reduce risk, then you should be more prepared. Walkthrough doesn't reduce the fun as much in games where the gameplay loop is action combat, but it doesn't strategy micromanage in games like this. Yeah, I could see that. So yeah. I think we've been on that for long enough. Never get into DD2 and hated it, but DD1 is a masterpiece, so constantly coming back to replay it. Not as much as an opinion, though, or really a take as much as an opinion. I've read this too much. DD1 has its faults. Both are great games. DD1 has its faults. DD2 has its faults. The reason that I feel people say this kind of thing is that Darkest Dungeon 1 is imbalanced in favor of the player. Darkest Dungeon 2 is imbalanced in favor of the enemy. So that's why this one feels good to people, and this one feels bad. Because a lot of the fun or the interactivity and whatnot in DD2 is just kind of taken from you over time. Whereas in DD1, you know, all you have to do is put like 1 speed on Plague Doctor, get a speed stone on like week 4, and get like level 3 blinding gas, and you just dominate Apprentice. You know, it's that easy. A-Bomb's really good on all difficulties. Having all your skills available at all times is underrated. That's true. He's pretty solid, honestly. Books are quick to say, Blasphemous Vial, Demon's Cauldron, Ancestral Trinket Strong, who cares about the extra stress? You shouldn't. Like, the more control and stress healing you have in a fight, the less you have to worry about stress. Revenge Strong, while ignoring a free action that gives 10 HP, 5 speed on a fast character, 25% damage on the second highest base damage. And Blight Resist, I guess. True. It's there for when you need it, and if shit hits the fan, you'll always have it. Pretty much. Like, A-Bomb, you either play just wanting to transform all the time, or even if you're playing like a control A-Bomb with Padlock of Transference, for instance, which is the stun and blight chance one, you can still hit transform when you need to. It's like a safety button, like, oh, something needs to die now, so I'm going to hit this. So, I think A-Bomb is really easy to misplay, even though it doesn't seem like it. Hot take for both. DD1, accuracy and dodge are the worst aspects of the game. This is not a hot take, but I do agree with it. Can deal with the grinding game, but I can't stand when my heroes miss 80% attacks in the row. Meanwhile, the enemy can hit you 345 dodge. DD1 is not some kind of mystical Rubik's Cube in terms of complexity. Once you get like 2 speed over the enemies and you cap your accuracy, the game gets much easier. Much easier. But if I told more people that, they wouldn't watch my videos. For DD2, Act 1, Confession 1 being so limited in what we can encounter stopped you from replaying it. Yeah. I don't like it because I don't like the boss fight. The boss fight's like outside of Beacon is just super easy. You know what? It's not even that. It's I can't go to the other regions. I don't want to do Sprawl and Tangle. I don't like those regions. I like I can't believe I'm saying this. I like Fetter and Shroud more than Sprawl and Tangle, but you don't get to do those. Yeah, a lot of people are asking for it to be expanded, but who knows? Who knows what they'll do? Sammy, friend of the show, awesome person, one of my favorite people. DD1 hot take. Team building is not nearly as critical to doing well as some people think. It is certainly fun to pick a team that thoroughly counters every mechanic in the region you're going to, or that specifically destroys the boss. But it's by no means a requirement to win. As long as you don't do something ridiculous like rank 4 Leper, or take a bleed team to the ruins, and follow basic fundamentals, any team will do completely fine in DD1, even the hardest missions in the game. Optimal team building is more of a min-max thing rather than something every new player needs to do. This is true. What I will say is that optimal team building is entirely necessary if you want to go do very long farmstead endless runs. You need to know your shit then. And you need to have a very strong, carefully, meticulously crafted team to do super well in that. This is why BR has such a certain appeal. In that mod, you need to build your team specifically for each quest to even stand a chance. It's a very divisive aspect of the mod. That is why some DD vets love it and some players hate it. The thing with BR, Black Reliquary, as much as I do love it, is it's made by DD1 veterans, pretty much for DD1 veterans. New players will get stomped playing that because it's more finely tuned. It's like the people that made it know the tricks. You know, they know it's good in DD1, so they, you know, try and counteract against that. And so if you can't adapt to that, if you don't know other ways to win, or if you don't build your team to do 2 or 3 different things instead of one thing, then it's going to be much harder. DD2 hot take. The reason there's so much clamor for Arbalest to be added to the game, just an outcry for more backline damage in general, is that a lot of people are still used to the rank damage balance of DD1, where access to backline and frontline damage was more or less equal. Dealing consistent damage to the backline was no more difficult than doing so to the frontline, just depending on the heroes. In DD2, there's been a really concerted effort to make the frontline and backline more distinct from each other. So he thinks that Red Hook wants to keep backline a little harder to come by and weaker. I can't speak for Red Hook, but that is essentially what happens. And you can see that in when you start a new file with the starter team. Plague Doctor does not start with Plague Grenade. So your backline reach is already suffering heavily. Both the enemies and the heroes' sides, frontline gets hit a lot more, while the backline is a little safer. Mostly, yeah. Compared to DD1, where plenty of units could dump huge damage into the backline like it was nothing. True. Although I will say, even then, backline damage wasn't as high in DD1 as it might seem like. You know, there were bone arbalists in the ruins, chevaliers from the court, and groupers, cove lepers, right? They can spearfish. So there's some stuff that can hit the backline pretty hard, but not a ton of it. A lot of it was more of a nuisance, like Spinning Pig and Courtier, the Bone Courtier. And people, you know, say, Shuff, you need to put these things on screen when you're talking about them. Like, we don't know. And honestly, this stuff is not that hard to know. And I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm just too lazy to go find all the PNGs and put them all over the place for a half second's worth of footage that no one's going to thank me for. Some consequences to which rank you put your heroes in, as well as which rank. I mean, this consequence still happened in the first game. But, the thing is, too, where I will disagree, is a lot of units do care where you're at. They don't care as much where they're at, because a lot of enemies don't lose that much tempo when they're out of position. And also, bosses just like to hit the entire team. They like to cleave, AoE, whatever you want to call it, and hit your entire team. So that's why backline damage against you is a little bit harder to manage, because, you know, almost every single boss in the game has some way to hit multiple units that include your backline whenever the hell they want. And that sucks. We're never going to get a hero that's just designed to puke huge damage into ranks 3 and 4, like Arb or Houndmaster did in DD1. Because the options they already have, Occultist Range, Pistol Shot, Iron Swan, Plague Grenade, are as good as we're going to get. That doesn't mean we can't wish for Arbalest, though. She doesn't have to just dump damage, man. She can just, you know, we got heals, we got buffs, we got suppressive fire. There's a lot of cool stuff that we're missing out on. And then Houndmaster as a dog. That's cool. Are we ever going to get it? Maybe not. The backline sniper archetype like Arbalest does get added. That's a big if at this point. Can only really see it happening through a really slow playstyle like needing to reload or charge every other turn. My counterpoint is Leper exists, and Leper is built around the fact that he's going to be blinded every other turn, so either you have to swing through it or find a way to deal with it. You have to sink someone else's turn into it. Leper, not known as the damage king, you know, not like DD1 where he had the highest amount of damage. In DD2 he has pretty average damage and can't swing half the time, so... And yes, I know most of you probably have a screenshot of Leper doing 69 420 damage with a crits. Everyone can get screenshots and set up good situations. It doesn't change the fact that when you look at Leper's skills, like 6 to 16 or 6 to 12. For DD2, Man-Arms shouldn't be nerfed since the bosses that you need them for, Ambition, Mountain, and Leviathan, exist. For DD1, Ghoul is a better fight in 1 than 2. Yeah, Ghoul in DD2 sucks ass. No one likes that. Especially back when Ghoul got dodge instead of block. Man-Arms shouldn't have been nerfed since the boss you need him for... What? He shouldn't be nerfed because he needs to be used to counter certain bosses. Even that statement, if you need someone to counter a certain... Like, you need... For the record, I don't think you need Man-at-Arms for all this, but if you feel that you need someone to deal with something, we either need to buff other characters or nerf the boss. You know, because if you're at the point where it's like, this is so restrictive, I need to bring this specific thing. I have a cast of like 14 characters. I have to bring this guy. It's not good. Not good. Fortnite and Darkest Dungeon can make a good crossover. NGL. No. Musketeer is vastly inferior to the Arbalest in terms of theming. I agree. DD1 at least difficult for difficulty's sake under the guise of being a roguelite or whatever it's called. Ruthlessly huge. Permanent punishment for almost no payoff other than avoiding catastrophe. The amount of prep before each mission is simply ridiculous. The harder parts are almost unplayable without a wiki and top tier trinkets. I disagree. Disagree. It like a lot of this right here is just experience. You know, people meme on me because I take a half hour to leave the hamlet. But like in DD1, if I wasn't talking to chat or whatever, I would just, because it's experience. Look at the mission. Look what zone it's in. Look what you're going to do. There's like certain characters that are really good for it. Just make a team out of that. You know, some go in the front, some go in the back. Check to make sure all their skills or whatever are where you want them to be. And then buy the items you think you need. I have videos for all of this, by the way, but that's it. You know, it's not that in depth. It's way worse than DD2, I feel like, because in the crossroads for DD2, where you pick your characters, you're stuck with that team for the next like 3 hours. So you need to know what's happening. Like, you really have to plan for it. DD1 is really fun, easy, and fair if you use the internet for assistance. You try and play everything blind the first time around, the game will punish you for not knowing stuff that you simply could not have known. Throwing high-level heroes at a situation just to attain knowledge isn't difficult, it's just a time sink. So what I will say is, with a lot of this, you don't have to throw high-level heroes at things to learn it. A lot of the enemies that you'll face appear at Apprentice, which is the weakest level, and they just scale upwards. The only stuff that is 100% new to you is like the first time you fight a region boss, because then it appears 2 more times after that, so 3 total. The courtyard, because every boss in there only happens once a playthrough, so learning that, well, almost every boss, Croc's not one of them, but learning how that works is good for you. And then the final levels, you were cheating yourself of one of the best experiences in a video game if you look up what to do in the final levels of DD1 before you try them yourself. Because there is some kind of other sense of profound dread with how those levels set it up, especially if you're going in without knowing anything. It's beautiful. Don't take it from yourself. But what I'm trying to say here is you don't need to throw high-level characters. It is a time sink to re-level them, but you don't have to throw level 6s into the meat grinder to figure out what apprentice enemies do at champion. It's the same thing. Leper isn't bad because he misses. Leper isn't bad because he's slow. Leper isn't bad because he has unreliable damage. Leper isn't bad because he can't reposition himself. Leper's bad because he has all those things working in tandem. Other characters show some of the weaknesses, but not in his depth and breadth. He's bad because while other characters have some flaws that you might have to work around, the Leper easily has 3 times more to handle, makes him clunky, unwielding, just like his ridiculous sword. Very well written. But yeah, Leper has some struggles, especially in... They were easier to mitigate in the first game, but in the second game, it's a bit worse, because dude has like 20 move res, so he gets knocked around very easily. He can start a fight with 2 blind tokens and just not do anything. You know, and he has to either reflect or swing twice to get rid of them. Not good. PBD, Pitch Black Dungeon, is actually completely balanced. Not what I heard, and I refuse to play it. Abomination is underrated. We've seen a lot of this already, and I've defended Abomination several times. I'm not going to skip over this without leaving it on screen, so if you want to read it for yourself, go ahead and pause it. I appreciate the comment. I'm not trying to be a dick. Time is of the essence, though. Blackjack is just as good as Hands from the Abyss. The difference is that Hands from the Abyss gets ridiculous stun support from trinkets. Whereas with Blackjack, you can use the cudgel weight, which I think lowers your speed. Is not as appetizing. And the best you can do after that is like a Dazzling Charm. So you get like, what, 35 extra stun chance? Occultist gets like bonus 50 or something between Demon's Cauldron and Vial of Sand. Hands from the Abyss also has a ridiculously high crit rate, so it can get up to 220% stun chance at max level. That's hella good. You can double and triple stun enemies pretty consistently. Blackjack doesn't do that. DD2's combat is better in every conceivable way except stress. Almost. The only things I would say are control tools in DD2 are kind of weak, and taunt exists. You fix those, beautiful. Beacon isn't that hard. I agree with this because Beacon as a flame does not exist until the mountain fight. It is something that just straight up doesn't matter and doesn't exist. I don't notice it when I use it until I fight the mountain boss. So it's like, it does nothing. That's why it's a shit flame, is what I'm trying to say. Shroud has the best OST, true. Rabbit needs to be nerfed, sad, but maybe. Chandler Spawn's the best pet. For fun, yes. Poet is best path. I agree. Night Sworn, while cool, is weaker than the old one. I disagree. Hateful Pyre, Killer's Glow are the most difficult flames. They might be. I know BB struggled with Corpse Light too. So, we'll see. Playing DD1 blind is the intended experience. Yes, we talked about this. A lot of people mentioned this one. Helene is the best hero in DD2, no comp. Okay. Poet Leper is the best. I like Poet a lot too. DD2 does not need Arbalest back. Hold on. You already have direct backline damage. It's called Sharp Shot. Ever since Banneret can take the role of secondary healer, stress healer. Yes. Let me play Sharp Shot where I have to give up, you know, the other stuff the character does. after I unlock it at the Altar of Hope and get all the shrine skills, then Sharpshot is a very good, reliable damage dealer. But he can't heal. Meanwhile, Arbalest would come out of the box with some good range options. Probably a small heal too with the bandage. And I just don't like this, because this is a flaw with the path systems, right? When you can go, we can't have X character because X path or Y path exists. Can't have a ranged damage dealer because we have Sharpshot. So what? We're never allowed to get a ranged damage dealer? We're never allowed to get Arbalest? We're never allowed to get Houndmaster now? Just because Dismas has a flintlock? No. It's like saying we can't get more tanks because Man-at-Arms exist. We can't get more healers because PD exists. And Flag. Vestal's not a healer. Hellion is straight up better Leper. They're not the same character. They have different roles. But go off. Crazy amount of damage with better reach and more reliable. Leper needs someone to feed him marks, and even then, he can't hit every round. If they're feeding him marks, he can hit every round. That's actually what happens. Leper and Hellion damage buffs are comparable and easier to manage on Hellion, since you only need to make something bleed, which is very easy. No mention of the Hellion low health passive, where she gets bonus damage. I thought that's where they were going to go when I read this part. Carcass brings more utility and more sustain than Poet with Yop while stress healing the party. She can stress heal the party outside of Carcass. The only utility Leper has over Hellion is corpse clearing. No. Okay. Leper can take way more punishment than Hellion. Leper also has a lot of skills he can use, as annoying as the blind is. You know, he has skills he can use to help the team, like withstand, intimidate, bash, that don't blind him. Meanwhile, Hellion, you know, if you use Bleed Out, Howling End, or Yop and stuff, she wins herself. So she always has to like spend a turn fixing it somewhere, just like how Leper has to spend a turn fixing blind. But the thing is, Hellion is a damage dealer. Leper is something. Okay, he's not a damage dealer. Like more of a frontline support, or like a frontline sponge, punching bag. So, but they're just not comparable. Like Leper to Man-at-Arms is almost a better comparison, because you know, the only difference there is that Man-at-Arms can guard and get rid of sticky tokens like crit and riposte, and Leper has better sustain. I don't know. Arbalest was good. I agree. I used to say she wasn't, but now she is. DD1 has a horrible fan base. I wouldn't say that. I'm curious what this person said. Not even a hot take. Look, man, there are shitters in every community, okay? It's not just DD. It's not whatever. You pick a game, there are plenty of assholes. And the thing that's kind of sad with Darkest Dungeon is that the more time that passes, all of like the normal people, the neutral people, or even the positive people eventually start leaving. And so you're left with all of the Dunning-Kruger assholes who are toxic AF. Abomination should heal sanity when transforming back. He doesn't? Does he not? Maybe if he's afflicted he doesn't, but... Doesn't he? He heals the party, right? Are they talking about for himself? He's got Absolution, he's fine. The grind in both DD games is the most flawed aspects of both. The amount of time you need to invest is very disproportionate for the amount of content. Yes, this is true. Genuinely hate how neither game... disproportionate to the amount of content there actually is. I genuinely hate how neither game has respect for the player's time. I wouldn't say it's disrespectful to the player's time. But it's more just... There's enough there for you to make it work to beat the game. If you want... Because you don't need a maxed out roster in DD1 to beat it. You only need 16 good characters. Not even great. Just 16 people that know how to breathe through their nose instead of their mouth. And then you can beat DD1. Might take you a few tries, but you can do it. DD2, you don't have to max the altar. You can invest in only the starter team in DD1 and get a few items out of the gotcha machine, or not DD1, DD2, and get a few items out of the gotcha machine, and you can beat it. Like it is not that difficult to do with what you're given. You know, they give you enough to beat it, but if you want to keep playing, they give you more stuff to get. That's it. The moment-to-moment gameplay is fun, but it's beyond me why there's so much tedious and pointless grind in between those periods. I mean, DD1, the grind without Crimson Court, the grind in DD1 is insane. Because you're just doing the same missions, fighting the same enemies, and you're just leveling from 0 to 6. And all of your improvements, like your skill improvements, your gear improvements, stuff like that, those just exist to help you scale with the enemies. And that sucks. There's the issue where once you've gone through a dungeon or region once, you've pretty much seen most of what there is, barring champ enemies, etc. I mean, sure. Like, the mash has changed. The whole point is to, like, see if you understand it well enough to just become more and more efficient at it, you know? It's like, if you scrape through a drummer fight one time, that doesn't mean you are an expert at the tangle, you know? DD1 is a 10 to 20 hour game that takes 20 to 40. DD2 is a 20-hour game that can take 40 to 60. I think that's only if you spread yourself too thin. Like I said, if you really focus, you can probably take it down much faster than that. So, but I don't understand. Like, what is this take? Why do people not want to play the games that they paid for? Like, the grind isn't even that bad. Like, grinding stuff in Hades can suck. Grinding stuff in, God, what are other games? I'm blanking. I need examples desperately. My brain's just not putting them together. But there are some games that do it very well. Like, the grind is just kind of on the side of you doing stuff. Like, The Last Spell. You know, you just play the game. You keep trying to, like, push the challenges and stuff like that. Make it harder. Try new comps and stuff like that. And while you're doing that, you're just unlocking stuff. It's good. It's beautiful. The reward for clearing the vitrine in DD2 sucks. I don't think it sucks. I just think the vitrine sucks. Which is why I unlocked it with the help of Ranger through file editing. Because ain't no way I'm sinking 120 hours into doing that when the travesty of Bastard's Beacon exists. Don't think Red Hook was even trying with that one. I mean, it looks good, honestly. The issue is with the vitrine, there's nothing in between to shoot for. There's no other skins, there's no whatever that you pick up while you're doing it to make it more fun. Thick, one of my favorite people as well. DD1, the reflection patch of COM or Red Hook changed the cap from 90 to 95 was one of the dumbest things. These are not my words, I'm just reading. They could have ever done. Imagine wanting to run something other than accuracy. It does suck. Because that extra 5%. The thing is, too, with DD1, if you hit 95 accuracy, like it displays 95 when you're trying to hit the enemy, it's actually 100 because the game always gives you a 5% chance to hit no matter what. This is also so if you get to like 300 dodge, the enemy can never hit you, so they have a chance to hit you. Doesn't mean it's good, but that's why. I'm not disagreeing with Thick, because what he's saying here is, you know, wanting to run something that's not accuracy, and that's true because, like, what ends up happening in DD1 is missing the enemy is one of the worst things you can do because most of the time they get an extra turn, you wasted your turn, so it's like a huge leverage and tempo. And not having to put focus ring on every character is kind of fun, but now we have to. The very same patch that made it so limited use skills don't refresh between waves as a counter to bolster spam. So they took the shotgun approach of gutting limited use moves like solo protect me tracking shot that weren't hurting anybody to stop one move. Yeah. That's one of the things that sucks about that DD1 change is that a lot of things were balanced around endless. And even if you don't have Color of Madness, so you don't have endless, you still have to deal with it. It's not cool. Torchless is neat and you enjoy it. Thick, you're a monster. Relationships in DD2 as a part of the game were originally very hyped up and ended up becoming a boring, shallow, most of the time non-existent feature. There's no depth to the system, or there's no depth or system behind the scenes where characters develop feelings as the run goes on. It's just random move of gaining extra effects. 90% of the time, you just buy your relationship within items. Could have been a cool part of the game, but ended up being very lackluster. Only reason people haven't complained is because it replaced the old one, which was despised. And honestly, I can mostly agree with this. The current version of the relationship system is definitely lacking. But it replaced the old relationship system, which led to negative reviews and people uninstalling the game. So we'll take what we can get, I guess. Taunt was a mistake. True. I'm actually going to have a video dedicated to discussing Taunt someday. Shieldbreaker greater than Hellion. Having to bring two of the same character to make them broken doesn't make them broken by default. I don't know if they're quoting me because I said in kind of a meme video that having two Shieldbreakers is pay to win. This is my GameSense video. That's right. But that's because you can spam Impale. One Shieldbreaker still does plenty of stupid shit by herself. You know, you got Puncture, which is broken, Pierce, which is broken, you have Block, which is insane, you know, with Aegis. And I don't understand comparing it to Hellion. Like, is it just because Hellion puts out more damage? Shieldbreaker is more of a, like, kind of hybrid damage specialist disruption character, you know? Like, Puncture is way better than most of the things that Hellion has. I don't know. Most of the confession bosses aren't fun. I would just say 4 at this point. Just overly big health bars, boring gimmicks, which can get out of control through unlucky debuffs. If I said that on stream, they would say skill issue. Example being Seething Sigh with the blinds. If you get unlucky and the turn order's not in your favor, your main hitter might miss because the Milk-Soaked Linen character didn't go first and your whole team with respectable damage, or is hit with respectable damage through little faults of your own. My counter to this is you don't have, for that fight specifically, you don't have one character that is charged with the task of breaking a certain lung every turn, possibly. You build the team to do it collectively, you know, because something like this can derail anything in the game. Like, you want to do an immobilized strat on Harvest Child, but, you know, the person with hunger goes before Man-at-Arms and he can't hold the line and get himself stuck in the front. Like, the game can just screw you over very, very often with very little things. So I don't think that just restricting that to the bosses is a fair statement. DD1 is better balanced than, or DD2 is better balanced than 1. Mostly. PD is the second best character in 2. On the other hand, Duelist is the worst. Even worse than Vestal. I mean, PD second best, maybe? Duelist worse than Vestal? No. Signature in items should be easier to get. I mean, you can get them through your hero goals now. Really like the current Obsession. Hope they don't change it too much. I agree. I love the current version of Obsession in DD2. It's like the most played confession that I have now. It's just the one I enjoy the most. Wish DD2 was like DD1 and DD1 like 2. So what happens, I'm going back to this, but with Obsession, what they ended up doing was they made a lot of good changes to the point where multiple strategies can work. You can use stealth, you can use dodge, you can use blind, you can use ways to, you know, protect certain units so all the scene tokens go on someone, and then you can set up kills for people to remove scene tokens. You can use Shimmering Powder and just nuke all the scene tokens outside of Beacon. There's a lot of cool stuff. It's a good fight. DD1 Vestal is better without healing trinkets for courtyard runs? What? I know you are not unlucky to die to a triple crit, just lack of defensive trinkets. If this was referencing me getting triple crit by Croc, I had a Barristan's head on my Jester, thank you. Okay. But yeah, you don't really need healing trinkets because a lot of the time, if you stall properly, you can catch up. DD2 was better in the last patch before it went to 1.0. Hell no. DD1 had a bad balance that rewards the player with too many moves in their favor. Stunning is just one of them. DD2 wasn't supposed to be a permadeath roguelike the way it's set up. It is fundamentally wrong. It tries to solve the problem of the former game by favoring the enemies. I mean, this part wasn't supposed to be this. I mean, unless you're, you know, Chris Brass or Tyler Sigmund, I really doubt you know, but I don't. It's fundamentally wrong, but I do agree with this part. It solves the problem of the former by favoring the enemies. I agree with this. We talked about this earlier. Then tries to solve the last problem by becoming even more hybrid and less centered. The game will... What does that even mean? The game will simply tend to destroy a run if it thinks the player has too much of an advantage. What? Am I getting trolled? It might look like RNG, but it really isn't. Source? I won't try to explain or give examples. If you don't believe it, that's fine with me. Let's say it's my point of view, so we're all happy. I wonder, let's say Frank Gulp went to college. They might have, they might not have. I'm just saying, hypothetically speaking, if they went to university. If you state something in a written format and assert it as a truth, and you say this, I won't try to explain why or give examples, they will throw your paper back in your face and kick you out of the fucking class. So if you don't have, like, this person clearly had the time to type up this entire thing, but not enough time to explain how this came to be. Like, find the line of code where it says if player equals amazing advantage, you know, underscore, then enemy gets 400% crit. I don't know. Like, where is it? This is confirmation bias, where it's like, oh, I'm doing kind of good. And they start feeling, oh, what if things go south? And then they do, because something happens. Both the games have a great atmosphere, basic idea, great, well-acted text, true. Great music, amazing graphics, very true. Paracelsus hadn't been in the image, I wouldn't have responded. Itu? Alright. Please note that this message is translated by Google, so may be illegible. If so, I apologize. After all, what I think is not that important except to me. I was very disappointed in DD2 and really don't think I will buy any more Red Hook products. The next DLC wasn't free, I wouldn't play it. But since it's free, I'll definitely try it. The unlockable achievements are the dumbest I've ever seen in a game. I think they're referring to having your entire team wipe at the mountain bosses, like all 5. That achievement sucks ass, because that's like a 20-hour time sink. But you shouldn't actively go for it. Like, you will wipe to a boss eventually. In any case, I found that the development team really listens and reacts to suggestions. They're very open. I really like this aspect. What I'm getting from this post is that it's always like people work backwards from a conclusion, right? That's confirmation bias, I think. So I sound like a Redditor. Bias? That is bias. That is an ad hominem fallacy. Fallacy straw man. I am very smart. That's how I sound right now. I understand, but like this person just felt like they didn't like DD2 and then tried to piece together everything to, like, they started from not liking DD2. Like, I'm very curious to see how many hours this person played, you know, and how far they got, whatever. Because just saying all that, like, it's the fact that there's no explanation. Like, you have to explain. I can't take this seriously because there's no explanation. All right. Completely don't agree with the argument, oh, you can't compare 2 to 1 because 1 has more DLC, then why is 2 so much more expensive? What? Like, because it was a game that was made like 8 years later? Because it has 3D assets instead of 2D? Because it's more expansive in scope? Because inflation exists? Why is it more expensive? You buy DD1 without a sale, all the DLCs will pretty much be the same price as 2. And the fact I have to wait years for this kind of game to have no content to justify the price is not fair, in my opinion. Okay. So, DD2 is pretty costly. I'm not going to deny that. It's a $40 game. It constantly has a 25% sale where it's down to 30 USD, and then it has the Iron Crown bundle, which they should just leave it in. I don't know why they take it out periodically, but they should just leave that in, where if you have DD1, you get DD2 for, again, 25% off. And you can trick people into thinking they're smart when they buy DD1, the definitive full Grave Robber Fishnet edition, for $7 that has everything. And then they buy this for $30. They're still paying $37 for both games. That ain't bad. I think out of a lot of the things I've heard where people try and compare the games, saying that you can't compare them because one's more expensive than the other, that's like, what are you doing, man? That's up there with like, oh, I paid, $40 for the game, but I only got 20 hours of playtime. Not worth my money. Like the cost to enjoyment ratio, people. Yeah, I paid, $14 for my movie ticket, and the movie's only 90 minutes. I got ripped off. My dinner was $18, and I only spent 45 minutes in the restaurant. Mark Bounty Hunter is superior. Sure, he's meant to be utility, but those juicy crits say otherwise. They're fun. I'll say that. Crusader in DD2 hits like a wet paper bag, and that's okay. I was going to say the same thing you did on a much smaller channel. Notice the great etiquette in not plugging the other channel in someone else's content. People forget this, all right? Unless you're a friend of the show, then you can do it, but I don't know who the smaller channel is. I don't want to know them. They might be cool. I don't care. This is my video. This is my turf. All right, you don't come into my house and piss on my rug. That's all I'm going to say. I won't give examples. If you don't believe me, it's just what I think. PD isn't that hot. I don't know, man. Short hair and nerdy glasses. How do you not like that? Doesn't even matter your orientation, right? It's just cute. It's a scientific fact. DD2 is in many ways, I like those transitions where I just stop, don't even talk about anything else. DD2 is in many ways a better game than 1, but it should never have been called a sequel to it. What should it have been called then? A side game? A prequel? The pre-sequel? The squeakquel? The definitive edition? The HD remake? Rebirth? What should it have been called? People like to do this where they go, oh, this. Okay, and then what? You raise a concern, and then what's the answer to it? Like when I say taunt sucks, my answer, remove it. Like I have a plan to do something with it. There's no plan to address this. Leper's the worst hero in DD2. He quite needs a lot of setup for very inconsistent damage. Well, his inconsistency is... I was going to defend Leper, but then I realized he hits for 6 to 16 on Master Chop. So yes, actually. He's not the worst hero, though, because there's no way he's worse than Vestal. There's no way. Like, just, no. DD1 has more grind compared to 2 if you're playing for the first time. True. Like, in DD1, it's kind of hard to tell where you're supposed to go. You're just kind of, like, leveling stuff up until you feel safe enough to go into the final level. Whereas in DD2, it's very clear. Like, I beat this chapter, I go to this chapter. Like, there's a path, that you follow. For all the cool ideas and new mechanics it brought, BR is overrated and only gets so much praise in comparison to other amazing mods because the devs are sweaty weebs that don't mind giving as much weeb bait as possible. That is a hot take. And I disagree because if you look into your heart, all of us are sweaty weebs. Okay? This is like what... Who's that psychologist? Carl Jung or whatever? You talked about your shadow, right? This is what's happening here. This person just hates their shadow. They're projecting it onto other people. Don't like BR that much. It doesn't have the same atmosphere, interesting narrator. Come on, man. The BR narrator is so good. I think there's like a gag reel where he did something like an Among Us shitpost, basically. So good. Every character in DD1 and 2 has a purpose to being there, but in BR, it feels weird for Crusader to... Bro, do you know your history? The Crusades went to the Middle East. He definitely needs to be there. There's religion to spread. And stuff to take. Combat takes way too long. In BR, yes. Sorry, BR team. With those caverns missions, short caverns is like an hour. It's not a single good skill with fire damage over time. I'm sorry, Dragonfly, Controlled Burn, Firefly, Mag Rain, Holy Lance. What? No. Pacing, gameplay loop, and grind of DD1 feels much better than 2. If you don't have CC, DD1 is a fucking march, man. Alright. To elaborate, I feel like Darkest Dungeon 2 is just a lot of waiting. You drive the coach, participate in the fights, a lot of which are extremely similar. Okay. I'm gonna finish this first. Bosses and unique enemies are extremely fun, but for experienced players, road fights are often kind of a slog. Driving the coach isn't really a mechanic that I think worked as best as having your party move through a dimly lit dungeon. There's much more predictability and thus the gameplay loop feels boring. DD1 runs also felt much more concise. Takes 3 to 6 hours to finish a run in 2. While it's not the same game, if we look at other roguelikes such as Hades, Isaac, Gungeon, these games take a fraction of the time. I do agree that DD2 takes too long. They've done a great job like cutting it down over the years, you know, making animations faster, consolidating like token pop-ups, stuff like that. It still takes a while. However, pretend I didn't just read this whole thing. I'm going to read it again, but I'm going to flip it with DD1. To elaborate, I feel like Darkest Dungeon 1 is a lot of waiting. You walk from room to room anticipating fight, and then participate in fights, a lot of which feel extremely similar. Bosses and unique enemies are fun, but for experienced players, hallway fights are kind of a slog. Walking through the hallways isn't as cool of a mechanic. No, hold on. Walking through the hallways and then getting a horrible split in the wheel where you have to backtrack 5 rooms isn't really a mechanic that I think worked as best as having your party drive through one length of road, have an event, and then reach a node. There's much more predictability, and thus the gameplay loop feels boring. Pretty much every one of these issues exists in DD1. Alright, they exist in the first Darkest Dungeon. That doesn't take away from either game that much, but like, when you say, oh, it's an issue in 2, but not in 1, that's just favoritism, okay? It's in both. It's in both games. And the grind in DD1 is way worse, man. Like, if you don't have Crimson Court, it's the same fights for like 40 hours until you beat the game. The bosses repeat 3 times. Dude. I don't know. Well, how does DD1 take its trains? Are much better, more fun to use compared to 2. Ah, yes. I love when I had to put on Focus Ring so I didn't miss. And then I put on Focus Ring on my other damage dealer. And then I put on Focus Ring for, my other character just because chipping in damage helps. And then, like, I had to put on Focus Ring for the 4th person too because I didn't want them to miss with their stuns. And then I put on, the stun chance trinkets because Everyone, like 3 out of 4 characters are stunning, because that's the best way to play the game. And pretty much every trinket was like plus accuracy, and then like minus something, like minus dodge, stress. Same thing with like the chance trinkets, you know, it's like, oh, my stuns have a better chance to stick. Only 10%. If I put on a stun amulet, I can't dodge. If I use Demon's Cauldron, I get like my virtue chance down. Woo! Being too sassy here at the end. Like, I will say this, the DD2 trinkets don't go as far as they should. Like, DD2 trinkets need to be insane to be, like, more fun than they are. So, like, the cultist trinkets are actually pretty cool for that. But, like, why isn't there... Like, why isn't there like, a trinket for leper, where it's turn end, if has blind, add riposte. You know, just stuff that dynamically changes how you play a character. Not just paths, but then, like, you have trinkets to do that. So when you put trinkets on characters with different paths, since everything's more fleshed out and dynamic, you get all this other cool stuff, and it just keeps your brain spinning the gears, growing more wrinkles so you can learn different ways to enjoy the game. Whereas in DD1, you're just slapping focus ring on half your freaking team. It's not fun to use. So many of the DD2 is too slow complaints would be killed if they just removed the driving section. Yeah. Yeah, kinda would. It's slow because the driving is slow for us. So what if we took out the slow part? The game really needs an animation speed up. People have been asking about this for a long time, but the game just needs an animation speed up. We love the art. We think it looks amazing. We don't need it to run at base speed, okay? But it does. DD2 doesn't respect the player's time. There are a lot more egregious examples of not respecting your time, but the only thing that actually happens on roads is you get random items sometimes. You know, a lot of times in Darkest Dungeon 1, you walk through a hallway and you get random items. Because there's curio. Or you hit a trap. Like, in DD1 or 2, right? Try and figure out the game I'm talking about. When you go from point A to point B, you have a chance to find items, fight enemies, hit traps, or have nothing. Which game am I talking about? At least in DD1, the hallways had curios, random encounters, hunger checks. These exist in this game now! In DD2, man. No one likes hunger checks, and built tensions with its ambience and sound design. DD2 has none of this, so why bother making the player just sit there? No. No. I will say DD2 does lack in the atmosphere department. But that's just because it's a different type of game. I mean, you have a... DD1 was like, everything sucks. Let's go walk into this dank-ass dungeon and look around for some gold. And the farther you go, it's like, yeah, things in this universe suck. Fight a boss? Yep, shit really sucks. Beat the game? Wow, this sucks. Everything just sucks. DD2 is like, it's hopeful. Go give hope to everyone. Go defeat the primeval. Do cool stuff. It feels like I'm defending DD2 more than I want to, but I'm just playing like both sides here. For DD1, believe that orange trinkets really shouldn't be available for apprentice boss missions. You know, that would change some stuff for sure. That's an interesting thought. I never thought of that. Want to like DD2, but I can't 3-hour runs for a roguelite. Runs of any type. So it just feels sluggish and slow. Also don't like the generalized feel of your expeditions. Love how DD1 you picked a goal, like short catacombs. Had a thing to bring what's there. You do this in the... You do this in both games. You boot up when you're in the inn, you pick a region, and it says like, this is the region modifier. And if you do this little goofy, stupid challenge, like telling me your grandmother's maiden name, you get some candles, right? Those are cool. Or some trinkets. So that's a goal. That's a short-term goal. The region takes, you know, like 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes. And you make a custom run. Or custom team for that run. Like, it baffles me how many people praise DD1 for something and then says DD2 doesn't have it when it's like in both games. It blows my mind. I keep reading it, man. I didn't read these comments until I shot this video, by the way, so it's been cooking for like 3 weeks. So these are all like my first time reactions. Leper's bad. He requires too much support to be viable and is way too reliant on position. There's nothing Leper can do that another tank can't do better. Are we talking about 1 or 2? Because in both games, guess who needs rank 1 to be at full power? Hellion. Guess who needs like rank 3 or 4 to be at full power? Every backliner. Like, the entire cast has rank dependency. And saying that there's something Leper can do that others can't do better, I'm sorry, no other tank can look regal as hell and exhume such giga chattiest energy as Leper. Alright, so Leper just trumps them in that regard. DD2 is a shallow game made for casuals because Red Hook wanted to move out of the niche, but ultimately cult classic stats the first game, then appeal to Call of Cthulhu, D&D tabletop role-playing games. I mean, there's still the Lovecraft narrative, right? It's still got that theme going for it. Is it a shallow game? Like, let's look at how shallow DD1 was. I'm building a team in DD1, as we talked about before. I put accuracy on like 3 characters, and I picked 2 to 4 stuns. I've beaten everything that's not like a stun immune boss. Just doing that. Like, there are less dials to turn and less gears to grind, or whatever you want to say, for DD1 comparatively. Like, it's way more shallow than 2. The issue with 2, the reason you can't tell that it's got more complexity is because the balance is so out of whack right now that it doesn't get a chance to shine. Like, you're picking Ravager because your best strategy is to blow stuff up in 2 turns because you have weaker tools to control them. You know, it's like, why use Blinding Gas that has a 1-turn cooldown or whatever when I can just Plague Grenade 2 times and kill them on turn 3? Instead of blinding them for a turn every other turn, I can just kill them outright, you know? So once we start fixing that, it'll be better. But as of right now, I really don't think that DD1 is got more depth than 2. It's just not happening. And like, they wanted to move out of the niche, but ultimately Cult Classic. Like, Red Hook likes to do different things. They didn't want to make the same game. They said this from the beginning! In like one of the first interviews before the game came out in early access of 2021. Red Hook was like, we don't want to invalidate Darkest Dungeon 1 by making a sequel that is just that game, but more. They wanted to do something different. And they did. They're getting penalized for it still. Look at Rogue Legacy 2. Like, oh, I have Rogue Legacy 2. I'll never have to play Rogue Legacy 1. Oh, I got Overwatch 2 because I'm, I don't know, Blizzard fanboy, even though I don't play Overwatch. I'm just saying, hypothetically speaking. Now I don't have to play Overwatch 1 because, you know, I'm going to play the PvE in Overwatch 2, which got axed, and, you know, enjoy this $70 skin. The same is true for DD2 DD2, they didn't want to do the same thing. They wanted to do something different. It's a more narrative driven game. Like, the first game was definitely more of a 3.5e D&D type of game, you know, like number crunching and a lot of combat, you know. DD2 is more narrative focused. There's more story, there's good emphasis on it, and they try and put you in the world a bit more. You're not just going room to room, fight to fight. It's, you know, you go to a node, you learn about the academic from like one of the studies, you go help some people, you know, you show up and they're like, oh, we're starving. You give them, you know, some fire, and then they give you slime mold that they didn't need, so that's cool. DD1 is better. Okay. BR had a more interesting world than DD1. We don't know much about the world in DD1. All we know about the Darkest Dungeon world is that there's some weird funky stuff going on with space-time, and there's Cthulhu stuff, but it also has France and Germany as confirmed places. Like that's what we know. BR, they're doing their best to like flesh out a lot of stuff too. BR is better than DD1. Okay. Wait, why did this pop up twice? I read this comment. Alright. That's everything. That's gonna be a long video. I'm probably gonna split this. So thanks for everyone for commenting. Again, I'm just poking fun at y'all. Don't take it personally. Don't get it twisted. You know, I'm sure people will, but that's okay. If you disagreed with something I said, make sure you just throw it in the comments below. Definitely, the longer thing you type, the better, because it really helps the algorithm. Okay, so when you're typing too, make sure to replay the video and let it run to the end, and do that while you're typing. Feel free to stop and rewind, play it at 0.5 speed. It's good. Jokes aside, you're beautiful. Hope you have a lovely weekend, because I'm shooting this on Friday afternoon. And I'll see you next time.